Hello and welcome to the Arise interview, where we take time to reflect on the big stories from the news and on the fortunes and affairs of the world in an hour of conversation with commentators, analysts and thought leaders. I'm Charles Anyekolu. Coming up in the next 60 minutes, voters in Nigeria's midwestern Edo state go to the polls on Saturday to elect their governor for the next 4 years in a contest that's been blighted by the coronavirus pandemic and a desperate battle by the two main political parties, the APC and the PDP, to keep a grip on power in the state. It's a conflict that's laid bare deep hostilities and tensions within and outside the region as D-Day draws near and the two sides deliver their final body blows. We'll get the perspectives of Nigeria's very best analysts in a moment. So tension, uncertainty, deadlock. Conditions have become murkier in the run-up to the Edo State governorship election due on Saturday. The two top contenders, Godwin Obaseki and Osagie Ize-Iyamu, have both suffered body blows to their public image, which may or may not translate into a loss of some popularity, and which in turn could slightly, if not substantially, dim their prospects for a clear win at the polls. How the vote will go is unclear, but both candidates have said they're confident of victory. We'll look at the last-minute positioning and posturing before the polls with a team of some of Nigeria's very best election analysts. But first, here's the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Mahmood Yakubu, talking about the ballot.
Our ultimate objective is to ensure that the choice of who becomes the next governor of Edo State is entirely in the hands of the voters. I wish to reassure you that votes will count, and only the choice made by the people of Edo State will determine the outcome of the election. The Commission shall not take any action to the advantage or disadvantage of any political party or candidate.
Acknowledging the need to adapt to the new normal, the Commission has put in place a policy on the conduct of elections in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. The policy provides a guide for activities of political parties, election observers, and for the development of technology, etc. Frequent hand washing, use of face masks and hand sanitizers, and observing social distancing will be implemented during the election.
Well, for more on the Edo State governorship elections, I'm joined now from the capital, Benin, by the scholar, writer and former Director General of NTA, the Nigerian State Television, Professor Tony Iradia, and in the studio by the Director of the Center for Democracy and Development here in Abuja, Idayat Hassan. And in a moment, I'll also be joined from our Overflow studio by Arise political editor Sumner Shagari Sambo. Thank you very much indeed, all of you, for being here. Let me start with you, Dr. Tony Iradia. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. And just because, of course, you are on the ground in Edo State, you know what's going on there. What's really at stake in this ballot, and how much does this election matter to the rest of Nigeria?
Well, thank you very much. For me, the election is just like any other one. It's a governorship election. But the importance is drawn out of the fact that the political parties who are desperate to win elections have a way of dragging in those who probably have no business with the state. Because I think that a state governorship election actually should be left to the people of the state. But you can see that many people outside of the state are involved. Maybe that will help to determine how many more states each political party is controlling. So the kind of premium that the leading political parties have placed on it have completely taken the contest to a higher degree. But that does not change the fact that the voters are Edo people registered in Edo State, and they are the only ones that can vote in this election. Any other person who is showing interest is probably just a facilitator. So I still believe that the stakeholders in this election are especially Edo State people.
And also taking advantage of the fact that you are on the ground there in Edo State. I mean, what's the mood like leading up to the ballot? I mean, how would you describe the pre-election environment? Is there voter enthusiasm there?
Yes, that is obvious this time around, and I think perhaps those who are involved in the elections have successfully mobilized people to the level that all those who are supporters of one group or the other are making a lot of fuss about what they will do and what they will not do. But today has been very quiet because, as you know, the electoral law does not allow for electioneering campaigns today. So it's been a rather quiet day, but there's a lot of increase in vehicular movement in the state. There are so many people who have come in. First, there are many officials, and then media have come from all over the place. The same with other interest groups, monitors and observers, all coming into the state to show interest. And you know, for some time now, there has been so much about elections in Nigeria having the problem of votes not counting. And people who believe that votes will not count are anxious to ensure that vote counts. So invariably, there's a lot of call for free and fair contest, which we all hope will happen so that people can begin to show more interest. I actually believe that voter turnout in elections in Nigeria is greatly marred by the fact that a lot of people are disillusioned. They sort of believe that it's a waste of time to go and vote. But if they know that the votes will count, they will go and vote. So I think this is probably the beginning of what I would call a better election. The statement by the president that people should not do anything whatsoever to mar the elections has also helped. A lot of people were under apprehension about what they call federal power. But now that the president has said that those who are custodians of federal power should learn to be neutral and respect the wishes of Edo people, one hopes that even if there were going to be some malpractices, it certainly would reduce drastically based on the posture that government appears to have shown to the people.
Okay, please stay with us, Dr. Iradia. I will come back to you in a minute, but let me come to you, Idayat Hassan, who is the director of the Center for Democracy and Development here in Abuja. And of course, this is just one of many elections that you've had to deal with in the last sort of year or so. But what is your sense of how the preparations have gone this time? Is it your assessment from what you know about arrangements on the ground that this ballot will be free and fair?
I think that Professor Iradia has hit all the right notes. Actually, I was very happy listening to him. What he has said is really matches reality. And I would like to put it out that this is the first election where vividly people are talking about their vote not counting. Like in Kogi Bayelsa, yes, there was like that, but not that exact word. That push, that drive for people to say, look, I'm not ready to go vote if my vote will not count. In previous elections, what we've adduced largely to voter turnout, low voter turnout, one, is the fact that democracy is never delivered development to the people. So why go stand under the scorching sun and vote? If you get nothing, then maybe vote may not count. But this is largely about vote not counting. And so far so good. The security agents have kind of displayed some very non-partiality, at least as at this moment. We've not had incidents of people saying, yeah, they are intimidating them. Of course, we've had that the massive deployment might also scare some people who really want to cast their vote. But we have not had that rampant, but we are still waiting, and we are very hopeful and positive that the same will not happen as we've witnessed in actually the two last of cycle elections in Kogi and Bayelsa. Also, that is commendable. On INEC, so far so good. By the time I'm coming, before I got here, we just did debriefing with some of our observers on ground. Actually, everybody, we had a simulation and we were taking count of what exactly is happening on ground. And some of my colleagues, everything is actually calm, extremely calm compared to the last few days. And there is this old drive that people want to actually go out tomorrow and cast their votes. And INEC, so far so good, has also said to be deploying all logistics. But until tomorrow,
that's
or
when
by
you'll
evening,
know for sure.
we will learn for sure. At least by this evening, we can say authoritatively, because we have journalist colleagues who are on ground and monitoring this for us, who can then give us an assessment, and we will know if deployment will be early tomorrow as expected. But I think it's very important that this is an opportunity for us to reassure Nigerians and ensure that votes do count. And we also look to this as an opportunity, such as the 2012 elections, that by the time they finish the elections, if that is actually possible, because these actors have delegitimized the process. The then governor said, listen, with President Goodluck Jonathan, it was just a free, fair, and credible election. So hopefully, and I think I've become quite positive in the last couple of hours, cautious optimism that things might actually work better tomorrow.
And just in terms of the previous elections that you cited, what's the fundamental difference? I know you've talked about quite a few things, but I mean, just pick one central thing that you think appears to be better this time, although you did caution that the election hasn't taken place yet. But compared to the same time period in a previous election?
I think in previous elections by now, by the time we were in Kogi, let me use Kogi as an example, last year, by now we had already started hearing stories of massive vote buying, payment of electoral officers in dollars, and we had even had one political party hotel being invaded by the police, like around this same 4 p.m. All was almost let loose. We were on edges, such as by the time it was election day, it was something that we had foreseen. So that is not happening, at least few hours. By the same time, like I'm using time as using the same time barrier, factor, and belt in the previous elections. And you will know that in Bayelsa, by now, most of the casualties were pre-elections. They were not recorded on election day.
Right.
In election day, in the last 2019 Bayelsa governorship elections, then we had like maybe 10, 5 something people died already by today, that the eve of the election. So maybe hopefully, and I also think that if not for the tense rhetorics, looking at elections historically, because for us at the CDD, we don't try to just understand by what is happening at the moment. We try to understand by the history of elections, and matching same, comparing governorships, not apples and orange, but apples. So if you look at 2003, 2007, 2012, 2016 elections, pre-elections are always heated, only they are not as heated as these elections. Then when it is election day, often than not, except aside the 2007 elections, which went very violent because of a passive stolen mandate, they are able to counteract the forces.
Right. Okay. Well, please stay with us. I would like to talk with you some more. And of course, Professor Tony Iradia will come back to you in a minute. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our analysis in the run-up to the Edo State governorship election due on Saturday. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview. I'm Charles Onyekolu. D-Day is in sight once again in Nigeria's midwestern Edo state in the run-up to the much-anticipated governorship election. Political things are heating up or dying down as Saturday, the date for the polls, draws near. The respected think tank, the Center for Development and Democracy, has launched its Election Analysis Center and all systems are go, but everyone, of course, waiting for the Electoral Commission, INEC, and hoping that the Commission will not be overwhelmed once again by the sheer scale of the logistics and operations of the election, and whether, along with the security forces, they'll be able to prevent the usual problems of ballot box snatching, election rigging and violence. In a move to prevent the movement of illicit arms, hard drugs and political thugs ahead of the ballot, Nigeria's Inspector General of Police, Mohammed Adamu, has restricted the movement of vehicles in the state.
This massive deployment is not only to deter misguided political actors that may be bent on threatening the elections through acts of torture or other conduct that violate the provision of the Electoral Act, but to also serve as a strong warning that the government is determined to bring such characters to justice should they advance their unwanted, undemocratic, and unpatriotic intent. The message here is clear. For the political actors and electors that are law-abiding, they are fully assured of optimal security as they exercise their electoral rights.
That's the Inspector General of Police there. And with me from the Edo State capital, Benin, the journalist, scholar, writer, and former Director General of NTA, the Nigerian State Television, Professor Tony Iradia, and in the studio, the Director of the Center for Development and Democracy here in Abuja, Idayat Hassan. Thank you for staying with us. And straight away to you, Dr. Iradia, thank you for staying with us. Again, giving us a sense of what you've seen on the ground in Benin, does it look like the security services, the political parties and so on are playing by the rules?
Well, it appears so, and I think that is the best way for a layman to answer that your question. Whether they are playing by the rules will be decided much later. As of today, all appears to be good, and it is really premature for anybody to be conclusive about what you are saying today. Just like Idiat has rightly pointed out, elections in Nigeria are not things you talk about at the beginning. Whatever happens that mars the process midway through, you would have ended up saying that all is well before somebody comes and counterfeits it, and before you know it, all you have said is rubbish. On a brighter note, I see a lot of enthusiasm on the side of the actors. I see the security operatives up and doing, smart, looking good, and so on and so forth. INEC too, I've seen quite a lot of work going on. The distributions of materials have been going on. The resident electoral commissioner has been speaking. My problem really is usually what happens after now. What happens not even at the polling booth, but during collation. And I think that is where the problem is. So this idea of raising one's hope at the beginning like this and then dashing it halfway through is what I am afraid of. I just pray it doesn't happen. And that's why I have been in the forefront of those who are canvassing for a lot of technology to be introduced to our elections. The argument that we are not developed enough for elections are self-serving. I don't know where they came about that. We have e-banking in this country. We have e-salaries. We have e-driving license. We have e-passport. And when it comes to elections, somebody begins to say we are not yet matured for it. Yet, technology is the only thing that can cut off quite a lot of these unpleasant things that we're seeing. No matter how many security agents are, they are human beings. And so they are subject to human error. They are subject to being influenced. So I think that as we progress, we must begin to reduce this large number of human personnel managing elections under the guise of election security. Global practices today do not rely more on that kind of thing. But we can't do anything about that today because it's too late in the day to say don't do it like that. But I just hope that INEC will begin to do subsequent elections on a scale that is moving towards technology more and more. There are different types of technologies. You don't have to apply all of them same day. Professor Atahiru Jega came here with card reader. And to a large extent, the card reader has stopped some issues that we're all quarreling over. The present INEC chairman has been talking about zip-pad and portal, election viewing portal. I hope they will work. Only a few days back, when we started hearing that the zip-pad may not be completely used the way we expected, some of us were dampened. But well, it's possible that they can't really go beyond their capacity at this point in time. But we must do things that will make it impossible for people who believe in malpractice to have their way. And technology is the only thing that can cut them off. And the earlier we really invested in technology, the better for us. The earlier we did modern things, we do what others are doing, even in Africa, the better for us. You have 31,000 policemen in a state, and then you tell me that people will not be afraid to come out. Yes, some people will not be, some could be. And if they are not there, some could still be afraid. But I think we can do it better than we are doing now. More importantly, these other bodies are not actually answerable to INEC, who takes responsibility for everything. When elections spoil, everybody is blaming INEC. Whereas the problem may be security. In fact, today, the problem could even be judicial error, where you go to tribunal and wrong applications are brought in and everybody is angry. It's not INEC that is doing all of that. So as the principal election administrator, I think INEC must take his destiny in his hands and recognize that every other person is merely assisting INEC. It is INEC that we are going to hold accountable and hold responsible for whatever goes wrong. So they must design new strategies and devices for ensuring that they are in control. If somebody else is in control of what you are doing, you can't control him. So I believe that that is what we really need. But for today, I have not seen anything that should make one to be pessimistic. But the pain is that in previous elections, it has always been so. In this state in particular, we really never saw any pre-election problems as such. In 2016, there were no pre-election issues to the level that you found in places like Kogi and Bayelsa. But halfway through the exercise, we started hearing of people who were driven away from where they are voting. We started hearing of ballot box snatching and all of that. And all of that mars all the arrangements that have been made. It completely, disorganizes the entire system. So we have to do something about taking some of these issues off manual hands, off the analog system, that can help us have really successful elections and we won't be scared about election coming. I think that's the way to go.
Okay, well, that's a very, very important point that you've made there, Professor Iradia. And let me bring in Idayat Hassan, who's the director of the Center for Democracy and Development here in Abuja, because of course, given the coronavirus pandemic, beyond the fact that technology is absolutely essential to the, making sure that the election is free and fair, it becomes even more important that a disease like that does not blight such an election. We've got about a minute, I'm afraid. We have to take a break after that.
I think for the coronavirus pandemic, it's a minus, but it's a reality that we actually have to deal with. And the way to deal with it is what INEC has done with modifying the polling system, the election day system, and they've done that. And I believe that if the citizens of Edo, if they will comply with it, the elections will go on peacefully, and coronavirus, there will not be an upsurge of cases post elections.
Okay, well, we'll come back to you in a minute, but we have to take a break. But this is really very interesting discussion. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our analysis in the run-up to the Edo State governorship election due on Saturday. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview, where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things around the world and featuring the voices at the heart of the stories. I'm Charles Anyegolu. Now, as you know, Edo State holds its governorship election this Saturday, and Nigerians, as well as the rest of the world, are watching to see how the ballot will be conducted and if the vote will be free and fair. Edo State, which uses the slogan, "The heartbeat of the nation," is located in the oil-rich Niger Delta region and has an estimated population of nearly 4.5 million people. It's got a voter population of some 2,210,000 people, but apparently not all of them have collected their PVCs to vote on Saturday. There are 18 local government areas and 190 wards in the state and nearly 3,000 polling units. And with me from the Edo State capital, Benin, the journalist, scholar, writer, and former Director General of NTA, Nigerian Television, Professor Tony Iradia, and in the studio, the Director of the Center for Development and Democracy here in Abuja, Idayat Hassan. And in our overflow studio, we'll be talking to him in a hot second, Arise political editor, Sumna Shagari Sambo. Let me come to you, Idayat, first of all. Thank you for staying with us. And of course, your respected think tank, the Center for Democracy and Development, has launched its Election Analysis Center in association with other prominent organizations. How important is it to have that type of real-time analysis for the election?
I think it's very important in the sense that it inspires confidence in the whole process. That we need non-partisans organizations such as ours who can shed light to what is actually happening on ground, but also relate it to the past, for instance. So our own analysis center does not just monitor what is happening on ground. We project, like you see from our pre-election briefing and several pre-election briefings we have actually written and proffer recommendations, but we also validate without saying these results are okay or not. So if you look at it, for instance, we can go and tell you historically the turnout, the vote per local government, the swing region, by really understanding the electoral geography of the state since 1999. And we can relate the same to even 1979 when it was still the old Bende state, and 1983, and see what exactly has flipped, what that does with people, that it gives confidence in this whole process. And it also deters. So it deters. So at times of recent, we've also been many people have been upbeat, particularly observer groups, looking at the risk and what is actually happening with our electoral jurisprudence with the last couple of cases. But what we still want to say, the shining light, is that the deterrence that some observers are coming from Abuja, they are coming from within the state, and they are going to be watching what is happening, also deters electoral malpractices.
Okay, well, just stay with us. I'll talk with you some more in a minute. We'll also talk to Dr. Tony Iradia, who's standing by in Benin. But let me bring our political correspondent in, Sumna Shagari Sambo. Thank you for your patience, Sumna. I know you've got a lot of things to do today, so we obviously appreciate your being here. And just to give our viewers a clear sense of the lines of demarcation that we cannot cross. For example, we didn't have clips of the two candidates talking and so on, and that's, I presume, because of reporting restrictions that are in place. Just tell us what they are and what we can and cannot say or do in the run-up to this ballot on Saturday.
All right, thanks, Charles. Today it's more of like a buffer zone day for the election, a rest day before the election day comes on. And it's a day that the National Broadcasting Commission would not want to see any ad from both political parties or other parties canvassing for votes any longer. The Electoral Act prohibits that, and it's not allowed actually for political parties to go about canvassing for votes. And at this point in time, what is expected is for the National Electoral Commission, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, to ensure that the sensitive and non-sensitive electoral materials are distributed within this last 24 hours before the election day. And that usually happens on a day like this when those sensitive and non-sensitive materials are removed from the Central Bank of Nigeria, which is usually the custodian of these sensitive materials, and then sent to the entire local governments. Now we have 18 local governments, and as at last night, the Independent National Electoral Commission had assured all parties, including the major opposition People's Democratic Party, whose leaders actually visited the INEC headquarters here in Abuja, to plead with the electoral body to ensure that all is set, that the sensitive materials have been distributed, and as a result of that, all will go well, and that the earlier cry by the PDP that requesting for the results sheet, both at the ward and then the local government levels, to be signed by the resident electoral commissioner of INEC in the state, that plea had already been taken into cognizance, and INEC was assuring all Nigerians as at last night that everything will go very well. So as it stands right now, we can only talk about preparations for the election, but we can say what the candidates were asking their voters to do as at yesterday, because I mean, the campaign period has already passed.
Thank you very much indeed for setting that out very clearly, but we can talk about the issues though, can't we? What are the issues at stake?
Now, the issues at stake during this Edo polls is that Nigeria's election credentials are actually going to be advertised in preparation to the 2023 general election, starting from this. And that's why you could see President Muhammadu Buhari sending out that firm statement yesterday saying that we should do away with do or die politics, and that he wants to bequeath to the nation a free, fair, and credible electoral system that will also be inclusive in terms of carrying along those who are persons that had initially not been carried along, talking about people with disabilities and all of that. Now, the crucial issue here is that you have these two major political parties, the APC and the PDP, almost going head to head here, and that's why there's a lot of tension. Just like it happened in 2016, we had a situation whereby there were lots of interests, but those interests were subsumed in the fact that Nigerians were asking that all we expected as at then was credible elections. Yes, the election was free, fair, and credible to a large extent, but the rhetoric in this election is what has made so many persons to be concerned about how the election day is going to be like. But like Dr. Tony Iradia said earlier on, the major thing in electioneering process in Nigeria doesn't really happen before the election. It happens mostly after the election, not even on election day so much like that. So the collation process is where all eyes are on. And that's why the issue of the introduction of the zipper technology, which helps in voter authentication alongside the card reader system, was welcome. But INEC says it's not going to use it this time around. So if that's the case, then we'll have to be left with the smart card reader. Now, this smart card reader, some of them got burnt during an INEC fire outbreak. Have these card readers been replaced fully by INEC? Are all the card readers going to work fully on election day? Are we going to have the security services also ensuring that they do not allow the intimidation tactics that the opposition party has been accusing the ruling party of to come to bear? Because the fears are that, for example, where the opposition has a large strength, there may be full deployment of security and it scares voters away. And also, the ruling party is also saying that the incumbent governor, Godwin Obaseki, who is also a contestant here, may also use his incumbency powers to actually try to tilt the votes. So in all of this, there are fears. But in all, the issues of electoral credibility are at stake here. If INEC doesn't get this right, then it means we're having a challenge, because Ondo State governorship election will be coming up on October 10. And so the precedents that will be set from this will actually let us know if indeed there's a need for more amendment of the Electoral Act to accommodate some of the proposals being brought about by citizen organizations like CDD has said, or we may actually just continue. Critical issues to be looked at is that this is the first major election that we are holding during the COVID-19 period. How is INEC going to make a success out of this? We are hearing of face masks to be used and all of that. Some other persons have raised issues of security. What if people use face masks to actually come and take ballot boxes and all of that? How will it be? Because I mean, proud to now, if you had won a face mask to a Nigerian bank, people will be assuming that it's a robbery. But this time around, people are being allowed to wear face masks because of what's going on. But what if people deploy that for a wrong purpose, for ballot box snatching and all of that, for result sheet snatching and all of that? Well, how INEC handles all of this, and in an atmosphere of giving citizens the right to exercise this voting franchise without them being stepped aside because of the voting period, these are all the issues. Because like CDD has said yesterday, there may be a need to extend the voting period because of the COVID-19 guidelines. So how INEC manages that will also mean so much. And then the other issue that is at stake here is that the collation process. INEC has said that it's going to be opening up its platform for both civil society organizations, the media and all of that, to assess the situation room, to see how the results that are coming from polling units are actually collated and all of that. So we all hope to see a credible process, a free, fair, and transparent process, so that at the end of it all, we do not have the courts deciding the winner, because that's the major fears of Nigerians now, that we've been setting a bad precedent in previous elections now, that is the courts, the Supreme Court, that usually end up giving a governor to a state. And it shouldn't be the courts that are deciding, it should be the voters that are deciding, and it can only happen when INEC guarantees a free, fair, and credible process.
Sumner, I couldn't have said it better myself. Absolutely excellent analysis there, and a very crucial point about the issue of the face masks and all the rest of them. And we're going to talk to Tony Iradia in a minute, but we have to make a switch from him to Mr. Iradia. But let me bring Idiat Hassan in, because you were shaking your head while all this, I mean, it all sounds desperately familiar. I mean, I just think it seems odd that we're saying all this again, because, I mean, apart from the coronavirus, we were definitely talking about this last year during the presidential election and in every election, in fact, in this country since 1999.
I think that he brought in a very different perspective to the COVID-19 protocols, which I think that most people have not foreseen. Our analysis are focused more on ability of INEC to implement this protocol, particularly with the wearing of face masks, since people are not complying. But this use of face masks also as a gimmick to steal ballots or perpetrate some untoward things is something that we have to immediately look into. Now, the collation has kept coming and coming, from Professor Iradia to Sumlat speaking about the collation process. I think that is the loose link in Nigeria's election. And I remember during the 2019 elections, for us at the CDD, we actually focused on the ward level collation. We even moved away from local government collation, because the ward level is like the loose link, where once anything that passes through that level, then it will go right into the local government collation center. The challenge is plaguing collations is one. Logistics continue to be a challenge.
Briefly, because we've got to take a break.
Yes, logistics is actually a challenge. Aside from logistics actually being a challenge, the invasion of collation centers by thugs and of recent men of the security forces, the law itself on collation, and of course the capacity of the staff to properly collate.
We'll come back to that in a minute. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our analysis in the run-up to the Edo State governorship election. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview. I'm Charles Anyiguldu. Now, President Buhari has called on Nigeria's political parties as well as the candidates and security agents in the governorship election in Edo State on Saturday to behave responsibly. In a message to voters, political parties, election officials and security officials, Mr. Buhari said he was passionately committed to the conduct of free and fair elections. But he said his commitment would not be enough if other players failed to abide by the rules. There are 14 candidates who are eligible to take part in the ballot, including the incumbent Godwin Obaseki of the People's Democratic Party, or PDP, and Osagie Ize Iyamu of the All Progressives Congress, or APC. And with me from the Edo State capital, Benin, the journalist, scholar, writer, and former Director General of NTA, the Nigerian State Television, Professor Tony Iradia. In the studio, the Director of the Center for Development and Democracy here in Abuja, Idayat Hassan. And if he's still there, in our overflow studio, Arise Political Editor, Sumna Shagari Sambo. Thank you very much indeed for staying with us. And I'm going to come to you, Professor Iradia. Thank you for your patience. A lot of very interesting issues have been raised here, particularly about the use of face masks as a means of going in and possibly perpetuating things that you wouldn't normally get away with in the polling stations, etc., if you weren't wearing a face mask. I wonder what your reaction is to that.
Well, I think it's a point, very great point, well made by Jat, but there's very little we can do about that since we are doing this election under a particular protocol system. With raising this kind of awareness, what it does is that it helps the bodies to now begin to be a little bit more vigilant about people who are coming in. Now, it's actually something I've always worried about. Do we really have security operatives doing the job they are supposed to do? Are they too few? I mean, Edo has 31,000 police officers only, and all other bodies are also there. The NCDC I hear has about 13,000 and so on and so forth. What do these people do? Because if they are really within the state, they can at least raise alarm, they can draw attention, they can apprehend anybody, provided that person is not armed. And if he's armed, I don't see why he should go into the station. So, but these are issues of security that may really be too difficult for anybody to quarrel with. But Charles, I have a little problem that I am worried about well before we get to the level of entering the polling center. And that is about getting to the center itself. You see, we have refused to draw attention or to draw a difference between what is and what ought to be. Now, we have heard that there is a restriction to movement. Nobody should move between 11:59 p.m. tonight and 6 p.m. tomorrow. Now, how do people go to vote? Now, the argument is that you can go and vote, but we are not going to allow vehicular movement. How many people are close to their homes as of today? And then you see people talking about you are supposed to be close to your home. Suppose is one thing. Are you really close? Is the police station really close to homes of many people? Because we have refused to recognize that during the registration period, there was a lot of, running here and there, hustling to get registered. And for fear of being left out, a lot of people registered wherever they found a space, which may not really be close to their homes. And I hear people say, oh, you should have switched by now. How do you do it? You should have switched. What's the process? I don't know whether other people have been that lucky. As a person, I haven't been that lucky to switch from where I registered to another place. I haven't been that lucky. And so that type of situation, I think that security operatives should have been made to understand that if a man is going to vote, he has his voter's card, and he's not within a walking distance, he should be able to drive his car up to that point. But if it is between a city and another city, that's understandable. The outskirts of every city should be held, and nobody should pass through those ones. But within the city, I think there ought to be free movement. Otherwise, a lot of people will be disenfranchised. A lot of people registered where they work, And on that day of election, they are not going to be near where they work. They are going to be near their homes. I don't know what they have done about it. Maybe this has been done in my absence, but it's something that has always worried me. I think the statements about how people can vote should be a little bit more elaborate. People should be more educated as to their freedom to be able to go to exactly where they are going to vote. But if you say no vehicular movement and the place that somebody has registered is very far away, he's likely to just lose hope and say he wouldn't go. I don't know what the Edo State Electoral Commission has done. Maybe they have upgraded it to a level, but I haven't been upgraded to that level. And maybe I have not followed the correct procedure. But only yesterday, a friend of mine was raising the same issue with me, and he was saying two other people had raised the same issue with him. So I think that these are areas we need to look at, so that if this is free, then we know we have reached the polling center. Then we begin to talk about what happens in the polling center. I think that the polling agents are also there. The people are there in the ward where you registered. A lot of people know themselves. So when there's a strange face, it's very easy to identify. Whether he's wearing whatever, because without you being identified, you cannot vote. So people should be able to see your eyes at the point at which they want to identify you, and they see your card and be able to know it's really you that is holding it. So I think there's a level to which I think we should not be too restrictive about the face mask. It is a good thing. We ought to wear the face mask. Everybody ought to wear it. But I am talking about if you want to identify somebody and be sure he's the owner of the card, can you see his eyes through his face mask? If not, you will need to move that face mask, in which case there are occasions where the face mask will need to be moved. And it is only when such things exist that you can stop somebody who wants to come in with a mask to come and do and undo. But generally, I think we should be a little bit more vigilant, because if the card reader is working, whether you wear face mask or not, you are not the owner of the card. Your finger will not be accepted. And that's why I think that we should invest more in the efficacy of technology. And that is the point I've always been making, and I'm still making it. And I hope that somebody will say something about what happens to people who are slightly far away from where they registered.
Dr. Iradia, I want to thank you for that contribution there. Just before we go, we've got about a couple of minutes left. I want to give the final word to Idiat Hassan here, who has been, in many ways, one of the people, her organization, that's given considerable confidence, not just to the people in Nigeria, but the international community as well, about the elections, because they've diligently monitored them. I mean, what's your final word on this election coming up on Saturday?
I think my final words will be that this, first and foremost, there are actors in these elections. As citizens of Edo, we should do any and everything to ensure that we exercise our franchise in the forthcoming elections and observe all protocols, our COVID-19 protocols, to prevent an upsurge of the case post-elections. But the two other actors, and who are very critical to imbue trust in citizens and in our democracy, will be the Independent National Electoral Commission and the security agents. We are going to leave out the political class for now. But if INEC will promptly communicate, we do its deployment deal with the issue of logistics and make decisions promptly in these elections considering the circumstances, and ensure that votes count. And if the security agencies, with all their large numbers, will do their work, act as operatives doing their work, like the professor said, and are non-partisan, I'm sure that tomorrow, all those hotspots that have actually been identified, they will be neutralized. We will have a free, fair, and credible elections. And Sunday, Monday, we will actually be setting an agenda for the incoming administration in Edo State.
Well, I hope it all pans out that way. And congratulations again on the splendid work that you and the Center for Development and Democracy have been doing. That is Idiat Hassan, who, of course, is the director of that CBD here in Abuja. And I want to thank you very much indeed, Professor Tony Iradia, who is a former Director General of NTA, the Nigerian State Television, and is a respected journalist, scholar, and writer, and of course Arise News's political editor Sumner Sambo there, who talked to us about a lot of very interesting things. Thank you very much indeed to all of you. That's it for this edition of the Arise interview. Join us again tomorrow from me and the entire team here in Abuja and Benin. Bye-bye, and thank you for watching.